Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 193 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I have my friend James Gilchrist talking to us about how to build a team that lasts. James started his firm in 2016 with 3 employees who are still with him here going into 2024. I think that is incredibly remarkable to have 0 turnover among those original employees to date. James is building his firm and has big plans for 2024. He focuses in criminal defense and immigration law, has a real big presence in the Hispanic community in the Charlotte area, and just loves what he does. And he's going to talk about that on today's episode. James and I met last year at the NCAJ convention briefly, and then got a chance to really get to know one another at the Freedom Fighter Summit in October. The day before we recorded this podcast, we had the chance to engage in our first post-summit workshop among the Freedom Fighters attendees, which was just a blast. James and I really got to bounce a lot of great ideas off of each other and off of the other attendees. And so it's been a real joy getting to know James, particularly over these last few months. So hold on tight. Buckle up and get ready to learn how to create a team culture for the future.
I couldn't be more ready, Jay.
Well, with that note, James, I'm pumped to kick this conversation off. We had the pleasure of meeting briefly at the NCAJ convention last year, and then got to kind of like develop the relationship a little bit during the summit, and it's been fun kind of getting to know you here over the past few months, James. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast. Really respect what you are doing on the business front, and specifically with regards to your team. I think it's really cool what you got going on. So very excited to chat.
Thanks, Jake. I love it. Love what you're doing too. So I'm a newbie here on this is my first podcast, so gotta take it easy on me.
That's all right. It's fun talking shop. I mean, it really is like my favorite part of practicing, honestly, at this point almost is just doing these conversations, because I'm learning so much from the guests that I get to have the privilege of having on. So I'm pumped about it. So it's you were sharing with me last week, and I don't know that this was even like kind of a real directed share on your end. I think this is just kind of like somewhat mixed into the rest of the conversation, but how you basically been able to keep your team, together, really without kind of almost any turnover. And so, I mean, I think that is so amazing and unique. So I'd kind of just like to start there and just kind of get your perspective of how you've been able to kind of keep your team together, because I think that's one thing that a lot of us small business owners struggle with, is trying to kind of find the right person, how to keep the right person. When somebody leaves and you only have 1 or 2 employees, it can be pretty devastating when somebody, comes aboard and then heads out. So the fact that you've been able to keep such consistency on that front is a real testament to what you're doing, and I think very cool. So yeah, any perspective that you have on how that has happened and the benefits of it, I'd love to figure out what that looks like.
Sure, Jake. I mean, I think it's something that keeps us all up at night. Is having your lead person, your go-to leave, and luckily I haven't had that happen. Um, I was blessed and lucky, I would say. I think we all get lucky in life. And
Yes, we do. I mean, there's no doubt about
uh,
it. Like you got to take advantage of the luck,
uh,
but we definitely do get lucky.
yeah. And so I kind of, my background is I was working at a small firm with another attorney. And I think the goal was always, no matter how good I was treated and how much money I made, I wanted to have my own firm.
Yeah.
So that was made clear with that attorney. We don't have any ill will after I left, and actually, I took a lot of people with me. So I didn't start by myself. I actually started all of us together, which is
Oh, that's wild.
a unique thing.
So you had the opportunity at that prior firm to kind of get to know some of your current employees.
Correct.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it basically got to the point, Jake, and I think this is where it probably happens for a lot of newer attorneys too. When you're working at a different firm, you have your own kind of set of assistants,
Yeah.
and so we got to work together. We almost had our own little side firm, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's how it feels. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So at that point in time, when I felt like it was enough that really I can do this on my own. We had that conversation at the office with my boss and let him know that, hey, they're wanting to come with me, and he was in agreement. He was happy to do it. He really didn't need them to stay on board if I wasn't there because we were kind of our own little team.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah,
but
that's awesome. I
it
think
didn't.
that's such a huge thing to have developed that relationship before going in, and so amazing to kind of capitalize on that. The first employee that I ever had at our firm, Henry, was somebody that I had worked with at the prior firm that I was at, and it was still like very much like I was sweating as I was like deciding to bring a employee aboard, but it really helped like having had the year amount of time that I'd have working with Henry, getting to know him as a person, what a good guy he was and how connected he was in the Hispanic community here in Asheville. Like, I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, the trust was already developed. I knew him from a personality frame. So that is, I mean, yeah, a really powerful thing to have had that kind of like background built in with those team members.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I remember because it started December basically 1st of 2016. We're still in the same office. We were painting the office together. We were,
That's awesome.
I go to, at that point in time, BB&T Bank and tell them, hey, I'm wanting to open a law firm account. And they look at me with like, I got like $100 in my pocket. I'm starting my operating account. Uh, and I do remember asking them about line of credit, and they said, no, you got to wait 2 years. I said, oh boy. So it was interesting on, hey, there's a lot that I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Starting out in December 2016, with at that point in time, 3 other employees that I have the responsibility for making sure that they can feed their families.
Yeah, that's a big, I mean, in terms of a kind of starting position and opening your own firm, to do that with 3 employees right from the get-go, I'd say is pretty unique in terms of our space of like small, solo practitioners. It's pretty unique. So that's that was probably a lot. I would assume that was a lot of stress and again,
Or some
obviously
Christmas.
the fact that they're still there is a pretty cool testament to it working well. But that's yeah, definitely a big jump.
Yeah, I think well, I got 2 kids and they're 14 and 9. My 14-year-old's in high school now, and I have a picture of them at the office sitting there like cleaning it when we first opened. And she had to have been like 3 years old. So it's funny to see how they've grown up in the office too.
Yeah,
They've seen everybody. Actually, we're getting together for our Christmas party tomorrow night, so that'll
that's
be
awesome.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of those employees coming aboard, obviously there was a lot of trust in you to kind of get the ship steered quickly in the right direction. What do you think was kind of like what were some of the challenges in terms of bringing three team members with you and starting things out and trying to kind of like spend time organizing and launching everything, but also figure out, I guess you guys had somewhat of a system already in place, but what did that transition look like?
It was a bit hectic, obviously, Jake. But for me, I wanted to make sure that we had a case management system in place.
Yeah.
I know you guys use Clio, we use my case. Um, that was my main thing of making sure that even though we might not have a lot of clients right now, the goal is to get a lot of clients.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of long-term thinking as well. And quite honestly, we had a lot of clients come over from the other law firm anyways.
Yeah.
It was busy signing those people back up with the new firm. They don't understand how that happened. They like, you're my attorney, I'm going with you. I don't understand, but they figured it out. So at least we were lucky that we had that client base already.
Yeah. That's really helpful.
It did. So that was the big thing there, is making sure that when we still use the same systems, and at least we do a lot of immigration law, and we have the majority of my clients are Spanish speakers. So everybody at the office is fluent in Spanish, besides for yours truly. So that's still a struggle. It's something that one of my goals is working on my Spanish. But going back to your question about how to deal with paying my three employees, making sure that they're happy. I think it was a good, almost like you like to run. So it's like a runner's high, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
Where we're all starting off on this boat together. And so we can kind of all look back onto that starting point even now of whenever we kind of veer off track and say, remember when we started out? This is what we wanted. Look at us now. But at the same time, that starting point, really, it was just focus on each other, focus on our clients, and really just try to get some core set of values. I think that something that we don't talk about enough, and I know that you talk about in your podcast, is your faith. That's part of the reason why I came on too. I'm Catholic as well, and we don't hide it. I mean, it's something that's part of you. It's part of, we're not here to push the faith onto anybody else or any of our clients, but a lot of my clients are of the Christian faith, and it's something that we can have some common ground in, especially, if we don't speak the same language, we speak the same language when it comes to the faith.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I feel like that is such a, I think for many of us, we try to be, a jack of all trades, or kind of connect with every single potential client. And, I think one of the kind of recent themes on our front has been, how can we kind of niche down? How do we kind of, focus and zero in? And you can do that when it comes to practice areas, but you can also, I think, to some extent, do that when it comes to, the type of client that you're kind of best suited to serve. With that attorney-client relationship, there is such a trust bond that creates as the basis for that attorney-client relationship. And so, you just are not going to be the best fit for every single client. So getting very clear about, who am I going to be the right fit for is really valuable. So that, I mean, just kind of having that faith component and sharing that openly. Again, I think from a client's perspective, maybe that's not landing with everybody. Maybe there's some people that even might be turned off by that. But for, it sounds like the majority of clients, it's like, okay, here's a real thing that I could connect over, right? And, for different people, it might be, you've got like your sports teams in the background. And so you have like that mutual point of connection, of a shared hobby or whatever it might be. But I think at the most fundamental level, it's really difficult to think of something that's more important to a person's value system than their spirituality, than their, kind of like faith components. So having that be a point of connection and, hey, this is part of our identity, and we're gonna treat you a certain way because of this being a part of like our core identity. I just think that that is such a cool thing that probably really does land a lot of people feeling supported. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think if you're not connecting with your client at that first, or potential client, that first initial interview, and consultation, it is an interview. They're interviewing
Yeah.
us,
Yep, they are. Yeah, yeah.
and we're talking to them as well. If they don't feel comfortable, then we're not going to have a good relationship for the next 3 years that
Yeah,
we
for
have,
sure.
because it's a long-term, it's a marriage when you're getting a new client. And I talk to them about that too. And very, very rarely are we not going to connect on some sort of level.
Yeah.
We're all humans, and we all have past experiences. My clients, most of them, I just had some consultations this morning. I do a lot of immigration work, as you know, and I had clients that just got here coming into my office, and I feel so lucky, honestly.
Yeah.
One of their first people that they come to see in America is me.
Yeah.
That's that's
That's crazy.
unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. That's
So,
crazy.
I feel lucky to have that, and we talk about it. And I don't have that shared experience of walking hundreds of miles to make it to the border. But I can only imagine. I'm listening to your last podcast about your 100-mile run, and that's what I think about with my clients is, how do we relate to them
Yeah.
on shared experiences?
Yeah, that's incredible. I think I think maybe along that same front in terms of, having that what sounds like in office shared value system, core values, whether you have those kind of you know discerned or kind of just, like this known core value system. What do you think that has done in terms of kind of keeping your team engaged and kind of avoiding turnover, as seems like you've just really amazing at kind of keeping the group together.
Sure. And I think we talked about this before we came in, and you asked, and I looked at the questions, have you done your homework? I looked at it. And uh, I also had my team involved in it as
Which
well.
is super cool. I think
Yeah.
that was such a cool way
I
to do it.
I thought, Jake, that they were going to say, "Hey, you pay me enough money, and that's it for me." None of them said that.
Yeah.
So that shows you what they're looking for me as, an employer. I don't call myself the boss. We all work together. If I ever say I'm your boss, then it's a bad day. But they want to see somebody as an individual. They want you to know them as individuals. And this topic is actually, it's fascinating. I actually did a study on it. It's I In college I did a paper. It was on the hiring and firing practices. Um, and I interviewed a lawyer. He's a family friend of my parents, and I asked him about it, and he said, "I don't ever have to fire anybody. We're all family here." And that's how I look at it: is we're all family, and it's true. I actually have two of the employees are sisters, and now I have an employee, and she's a mother of two other of my employees. So we are a family.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a family's fight. So, but we can be open and honest, and that's why I can send them and tell them, "Hey, I'm talking to Jake today about this. I have no problems with you telling me I'm a terrible boss. This is what I got to change." Um, and it was good. But that's
Yeah,
what they
that's
were
great.
looking at is well, I like that you look at me as a family member, and that you look at me as an individual. And there are days when we forget that. A lot of times it's like, well, employee one is, um, needs to do this, and employee two, something like that. I mean, um, that's not how I look at it. And if there are bad days where I'm doing that, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to take away from that. I think, I've heard a lot of people, suggest, both within the legal industry and outside, that, looking at your business and the team that you have as a family is a bad thing, because it's basically like, do you really want like your crazy uncle, Fred, like, working in your business kind of like mindset. But I think that the way that you just described it, we did kind of like a culture video a couple years back, and Henry, the same guy I mentioned earlier on the podcast, that's how he described the firm was, we're a family, and we work together, but we're a family. And I think that is a really powerful way of looking at the value of family, is that openness, right? Like, I mean, whether sometimes it's the bad things that are getting shared, but within the family context, generally there's a comfort level of kind of letting that stuff, airing your dirty laundry, so to speak, in that context. So, I think for the most part, obviously we think about family with this like positive connotation of, hey, we're all, we're kind of like they got this shared identity, this shared, culture, which is great. And I think that's one of the ways that, like, kind of thinking about the business as analogous to a family is so helpful. But I love the way that you kind of like also look at it, even from like the negative kind of connotations you might have with the family of like, hey, we're going to duke it out, and I'm going to say what I'm thinking. Like, I'm not, I'm not going to put on airs like I'm gonna tell you what I think. I mean, sometimes that really is so great, because that's how, problems get fixed. And I think one of the most problematic cultures that you can have as a law firm is having people that have disagreements and are not willing to, kind of, come to terms with that, that are not willing to kind of say, hey, how do we get this fixed for the client's benefit? How can we kind of stop beating around the bush and have like a meaningful conversation about how we can work through this problem that we're having? So I think that having that family mentality really is important. And you also, I mean, from a longevity standpoint, you don't really get to, fire your kids, right? Like, and obviously if there's a truly like, cancerous person in your organization, then you should let that person go. I mean, they're going to thrive in a different environment, or they're more likely to thrive in a different environment if they're not in, on your teams, and that can be very damaging to other team members. But I do think that, having a mindset of, family mentality of like, look, nobody's perfect. Let's kind of figure out how we can get everybody, on the team, including myself, elevated. Like, we're here for the long haul. Let's make this work over the long term. I think, again, from a family analogy, that's just so powerful. So I love that.
I appreciate Jake. Yeah, they really do. They are family, and they if there is ever anything that needs to be said, I don't have a problem. I always have an open door policy with them, and I think that that's always important, good or bad. Whatever needs to be said needs to be said, and then we're we're problem solvers, anyways, as lawyers. That's our job. Nobody calls a lawyer to like say hello and wish them Merry Christmas. So we thrive in those environments anyways.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm fine with it, and I think that some people think that it's a waste of time, but I don't. If somebody comes to me that has an issue that really isn't related to maybe a client issue, but it's more along the lines of work related or something along those lines, I can put on my problem solving hat,
Yeah.
and we can go from there. And they understand that it's okay to come to me with that, because I would rather, like you said, have somebody come to me rather than let it build up, let it build up, let it build up, and then it explodes.
Yeah.
We've all been in those offices. We've all been at those jobs where you don't feel comfortable talking to your senior employer or something like that. So you need to have that openness. and obviously, know when to do it, but don't pick on somebody when they're having a bad day, but talk to them about it and um, make sure that, get it in the right environment, that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, kind of, I guess maybe piggybacking off of your going back to your college day paper writing, as well as like all the lessons learned along the way, in terms of bringing new employees aboard, what does your process look like when you're interviewing somebody for a position at the firm? What is the hiring process overview?
I think that's really important, and that's something that I struggle with. I think that a lot of people struggle with
I think
because
small business owners across the board, this is like one of the
yeah,
most difficult things to figure out.
we're used to talking with clients, used to closing deals,
Yeah.
but hiring a new employee, you want to get to know them. You want to know what their strengths are. I think that one of my employees, when you asked this question, was having a base knowledge of what you're doing is kind of the start. Uh, and we had actually talked about this as a firm about, when we hire a new employee, when we hire, because I do want to hire new employees, actually not maybe in 2024, that could be a goal. What does that employee look like? And I said, well, does it have to be somebody that worked in a law office?
Yeah.
That's kind of my first question. And the answer I got was, well, no. I said, well, what if it was somebody who ran like a front desk at like a dentist office? Wouldn't that be a great person to have?
Yeah.
And that was something I think that I gained from your summit was, hey, we don't have to hire from our own industry. We can look at certain fields that maybe overlap and somebody like that who's really organized, because we've all been to dentist office. We see
Yeah.
how they
Yeah.
do their filings.
I know what's going on. They've
It's
got
all out in the
the
open.
calendar is
Yeah.
rocking and rolling. They've got it figured out.
So I thought, man, what if I went to stole one of those people away? Well, that'd be cool. I mean, so it's not just looking at what have you done in your past. Maybe somebody has zero experience. You could you like to say I could shape them into my own image.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be anything. It depends on what is needed at the office at the time, where you might need somebody with. I think we were talking about this yesterday before Ron brought up, what's somebody's knowledge base, and when you have them in the law firm, and you said, well, their knowledge base is, as an attorney, it's going to have to be pretty high. But when you get an entry level employee, maybe that knowledge base doesn't have to be so high. We just need to have somebody who fits into our culture.
Yeah, I think that in terms of, looking outside of the legal industry, to some extent, to me, there's not only just like a value of kind of having somewhat of an outside perspective on your own process, but when hire somebody that has been, whether it's an attorney or admin team member that's been doing it for a long time at another law office, there's kind of like a preconceived way of how, the legal process is going to go, what a file system should look like. So it can be almost like a more painful uh, incorporation into your own practices because of the fact that it's kind of like this person is wired to handle a case a certain way, do things in a particular order, have particular software that they're used to using. And so that can be somewhat of a difficult learning curve, even if a lot of the like kind of technical knowledge is already there. So yeah, I mean, I really think that in terms of each particular position, looking at what are the characteristics that kind of make this unique position flourish, a person that's in this unique position flourish. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity outside of the legal industry on that front. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good
Yeah,
perspective.
I think that we, talking about how do you hire, that's changing rapidly too.
Yeah.
AI might be my next hire.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Totally.
we don't know. I know a lot of attorneys that handle employees even overseas.
Yeah.
There's a lot of remote workers, especially in the industry that I'm in with the, people who speak Spanish. I know attorneys that have hired people in Honduras or something like that,
Yeah.
where and they're able to still meet their standards at their offices. So it's ever changing, and I don't want to be left behind. I think that
Yeah.
that's all of our fears is we want to make sure that we're updating and adapting in all of our practices, including hiring.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when it comes to AI and the amazing, opportunities that exist out there, even in terms of like chatbot on your website, which we're looking currently for, software to get that really incorporated because we don't have like a chatbot currently on our website. So we're somewhat behind the eight ball, but the websites, 5 years ago that had, a chat response, it was very, very broken in terms of like going back and forth. It might have been almost more of like a glorified intake form, that was just here's the three things to fill in. Okay, somebody will be in touch with you shortly. And then obviously it might be like 3 days later that somebody's in touch with you. But now, like the AI piece on that front is so powerful, in terms of being able to immediately respond in real time to questions and, have a meaningful response to kind of the inquiry itself. It really is changing rapidly, and I agree. Like trying to stay ahead of the learning curve is really difficult because we're already so strapped for time that is just such a important thing for us in the small business world to be cutting edge. I mean, I think that's really like our competitive advantage is, big corporations might know this software or these opportunities exist, but it takes so much work and you got to go through so much red tape to make those changes happen in a big organization. And when you're small, you got the ability to be like, hey, here's this new piece of information. We're going to immediately implement it. Like it's just, there's two people that it has to run through in order to get that thing going. So it's a huge competitive advantage for the small business owner if you're ahead of that learning curve.
And I guess just to piggyback on that, Jake, um, having your employees, having a small office like I do, I don't know about you, but I think it's going to be it could be an advantage for the
Yeah.
small business owners of, hey, we're not going to be doing it that way. We still want to have the face-to-face
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have, and I think you guys probably do as well, is um, law offices used to never text.
Yeah.
We text like crazy. So we have an office text line, and it is us on the text line.
Yeah.
If you're texting the office, you're getting a text back from an actual human.
I think that's how we connected originally was I
Probably,
texted the line and I think you responded back on that front. So
yeah. So I think that's people know when it's, well, maybe not anymore, but most people know now if it's a human on the other side or not. And we still thrive on that human
yeah.
relationship. So I'm interested to see how it goes, but I think that that's something again with keeping your team together, of keeping those relationships and knowing that, hey, a robot's not going to replace me ever.
Yeah. 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 For sure. No, I mean, I think that's the leverage then that you can bring to the AI format because really for us, in the service industry, it's all about how are we kind of delivering that kind of unique experience and it's people that do that. Like I mean that's really at the end of the day like the most valuable asset. And the fact again that you've kept the same group together and obviously added on additional team members, but the fact that you've got that kind of core group of people that has been there for so long and kind of building on that joint experience and how are we trying to help clients. You can't replace that. Like I mean you just there's no way to fabricate that type of like longevity of knowledge. And as much as you might get good at like training new people to come into the system and, hey, we're going to get you up to speed quickly, that there's a learning curve. There just is a learning curve. And so that's such a valuable, it's a valuable asset to have, that kind of like core team.
It really is. Like I said, I'm lucky, and also I'm happy that um, they see me as not their boss, but somebody who's working with them.
Well, as we are kind of going into to 2024, you had mentioned in our kind of back and forth exchange, you got some big swings planned for 2024. So I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like.
Okay, so we talked yesterday, and we were talking. One of the attorneys has a very large law practice, and we were talking about revenue. Um, I've never set a revenue goal, Jake.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I
I,
mean
I need to.
it's so bizarre to
Yeah,
hear, and I don't think Brian would care that we mentioned him on
yeah,
the show. I mean, we had a really good conversation.
we
So
did.
we had a Freedom Fighters workshop yesterday that we had, I think, nine lawyers at, 8 or 9 lawyers, and it was really great conversation, a lot of good takeaways. And so Brian King was on there sharing a number of different goals and strategies and his revenue goal for 2024. And it was definitely, he's in his own league in terms of the group that was on the call yesterday. But it was very inspiring to have somebody that was, confident enough to lay that kind of very, I would say, aggressive and lofty goal out for 2024. But it's good to hear that, as another person on the call. So
It is, and I'm not afraid to tell you, I want to make $1 million in revenue next year.
that's awesome.
We're each year we have been going up, and it's been, I think, organically.
Yep. Yep.
But we haven't set that goal of, hey, this is where we want to be. And I think it's doable. And like you said, if you don't set that goal, if you fall short, who cares?
Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody's gonna fire me.
So much more likely to hit it by putting it out there as a goal. And I think, it's cool to hear you say that, because I'm the same way. Like, I didn't have revenue goals, until probably it's probably been within the last 3 or 4 years that we started setting revenue goals. And, now we have, annual and quarterly revenue goals. And it's amazing, like, how what gets measured gets improved. I mean, if you don't have anything that you're shooting for, just by pure, kind of, organic, like you called it, organic growth, there's going to be year over year, kind of upward trajectory. But I think we honestly, like, generally speaking, as small business owners, and I would say particularly criminal defense lawyers, we're really bad when it comes to money. And obviously you're primarily like in the immigration field. So this
It's the
it is
same.
so it's across the board, family lawyers, personal, there's just this sense of like, we'll make what we're going to make. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, you got to shoot for something. That's,
Well, it's funny you said that. One of my employees, she wrote, "If you aim at nothing, you hit nothing."
yeah, that's
And
awesome.
then I think that was Michael Jordan who said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
Yep. Yep.
So similar type of thing. And I know you're an athlete, and I was a college athlete as well. So it's good to get those juices flowing.
Yeah.
They're always going to be inside of you, no matter what. So you might as well put them out there. And also, I want to work on my Spanish. I obviously deal with a lot of my clients speak Spanish, so I think it's nice that I can at least have some conversations with them. They can see, hey, this guy's taking time to learn my language.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
which I,
That's so important. Yeah. I think that's really important. Yeah, to go back real quick to that revenue goal. I don't want to derail you, but just before I kind of like get too sidetracked that I don't remember the I think the other thing that's great about having a revenue goal is it's kind of like a shared standard of what success looks like. If you're not putting those kind of like black and white goals out there for the team, I think, you might be thinking in your mind, man, we probably could be doing a lot better this year than we're doing. And the team is thinking, hey, we're going great guns. We're making more than we made, last year. And so like the expectations are in different place because there's no kind of shared goal. Whereas if you say, hey, here's the revenue number that we're trying to hit for this year, then it's very clear to everybody quarter over quarter, month over month, like, are we kind of on track for this thing that we are targeting? Or do we, are we, going beyond that? Do we need maybe readjust the goal? Are we off course? How do we get back on course? Like, it's a much easier place for everybody to then be on the same page. And that was I would say for us as a firm, really made a huge difference in terms of having people aligned, was being very clear about kind of like what goals look like, both at the firm level, but then also like, and Brian is really good at this because he has like these type of goals for each employee, admin, attorney, it doesn't make any difference. It's like, here is what a good week looks like for you. And so, that's something that, we haven't kind of got that granular with it, but I do think it's really helpful because otherwise people are like, I don't know if I'm where I'm supposed to be, if I'm, tracking on course with things. I mean, I do think that revenue goal is so powerful on that front.
Yeah, Jake, I mean, I saved our notes from yesterday. And I think I'm going to share that with my team. Really, I think the daily, weekly, and monthly tasks, that's what I got out of it a lot yesterday.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have them do it too.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Once you start with that, I just said, change one thing. We're not going to change the world right now. Just change one thing in your daily task that you hate.
Yeah.
Can you make it something that you love or at least like, or do we even need to do it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because then, there's also, I think a lot of times where we are doing something that we don't like. And part of the reason we do it is like, I'm going to take one for the team because nobody likes doing this task. And then, I've found out this many times that something that I just despise doing is what somebody else is living for. Like they're like, this is great. And it's like, how could you like doing that? That's so awful. Like balancing the trust account. Like, why would you think that's a cool thing to do? But there's people that are like wired for that, and so it's just, you're really wasting so much energy sometimes on these tasks that are, just dragging on your mental, well-being. So.
Right. And, it's the same thing. I mean, I've told my firm the same thing of, most of the things that we do around the office, I'm doing what you're doing, only I'm going to court. That's really all.
Yeah. Yep.
No, we're all working for the same goals, and I'm just kind of your lackey that goes over to court.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think, in terms of some of those growth goals, and I don't know if you had any other goals that you were sharing before I derailed you there, but in terms of kind of getting the team on board with, the kind of revenue goal, do you have like a plan in terms of, communicating that? Again, I think it's awesome just communicating it, like, communicating it as you did just now, to the world, so to speak, but also in terms of your team. Like, that's just such a powerful way to get things going. But anything specific that you're doing in terms of communicating that goal to your team?
Well, now you made me nervous with the millions and millions of listeners that we have.
Yeah, so it's uncountable. I think, maybe 30. Let's
I sent out an email this morning about it. And I said, well, this is a revenue goal. I said, I haven't ever done one. This is it. The next line was how ? Let's go. Yeah. So that's where we're at right now. Is how.
I think I mean, again, that's such a powerful lesson, like turning that ownership over to your team, because they probably know how to hit that goal better than you do.
Of course. And I told him, I always say, I said, well, if it was me by myself, it's not going to happen. If it's you by yourself, it's not going to happen. No matter how great we think that we
Yep.
are,
Yep.
we need to work together. If it was just me, my revenue goal would be a whole lot less.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that this can happen.
Yeah, no, I think that that's such a good way of presenting it. You're talking earlier about how, you don't call yourself the boss. And I think that that is, I think from a leadership perspective, being the servant leader is such a better place to come from. And I feel like, Lance and Gint and I frequently joke but it's not really a joke. It's like Maya and Stephanie are the ones that run the office, and Holly, like these are the people that like the office is being run by. And it's kind of almost like, how do we serve them in kind of implementing like the goals that we as a group kind of have, you know, planned for the office. Like what, I'll sometimes, go to Stephanie and she'll say, hey, here's something that, people are kind of falling short on, or this is not getting implemented. And I just say, how can I, help make this happen? Like, what do you need me to say? Like, I mean, do you need me to talk to somebody about this, send out an email? Like, you use me as you need me to be,
Right.
you know, used. And so I think that, that it's almost that, kind of opposite. We know who the real boss is in the office,
Right. And and I've listened to some of your other episodes when you're interviewing attorneys, and honestly, I feel blessed that you have me on the show. I mean, you have a lot of more seasoned and better attorneys than me. But all of our names are on the doors. But I think the best attorneys don't take that seriously. They take their work seriously. They don't
Mhm.
take themselves seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I think you're definitely selling yourself short on that front, James. I mean, again, I think that it really is like one of the coolest accomplishments that I've heard on the podcast in terms of just longevity of employees. Like, I mean, to me, that is just such a testament to what you are doing in your office. If you're keeping people on board with the kind of joint mission, so to speak, for that long a period of time, that is pretty rare. Like, I mean, and it to me, it's like the most important thing in terms of signaling a healthy culture and therefore a healthy law firm. So I guess I'll maybe kind of leave you with this question, kind of along that same lines. If you could kind of look back and give a young lawyer who is thinking about bringing on their first employee, or maybe somebody that's looking at bringing on their fifth, if you could give some sort of advice about kind of how to create a culture or think about the culture that you're trying to establish, what would you say to that attorney?
Um, I would say be yourself
Mm,
first.
yeah.
Don't try to be somebody else. We all see attorneys in the courtroom like, man, I wish I could formulate that argument.
Yeah.
Um, but we all do it. We come across our own ways, and our own personalities, and learn from your past experiences for sure. Um, if you've been married and you've been married for 10 years, 5 years, or whatever, lean on that.
Yeah.
Because you know, for me, that was my biggest accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting married and having children. And you learn a lot from that on your work relationships as well.
You do.
And
Totally.
you know just hiring an employee is very similar, I think, of getting into that. And obviously you have a family and you're married too. It's like, when's the best time to get married? If somebody says, well, I got to have so much money in the bank to do that, it's the same thing with hiring your first employee. You don't want to think that way,
Yeah.
because you're never going to get there. That's your thought. I need to have X amount of dollars in the bank to hire an employee. You really don't. I started out with zero, and we all grew together. Um, and I think that's it. It's be yourself and find somebody that fits with you. And like you said, if it's not the end of the world if they don't work out. I've been lucky that mine have, but if you treat them right, obviously, like I said, my employees' money wasn't even something that they brought up. It was they feel like they're treated like person, they're treated like a family, and they're not treated like an employee.
Yeah.
So that's how I dealt with it.
I love that. I think that in terms of, just having people stay with you for that long, I think there's probably a real value that they joined with you when, basically you are a huge risk, like, I mean, going out on your own and they're coming along with you. And I feel like the people that were here in the early days of the office, when it's like Jake is in the Wild West, he's just doing whatever the hell he thinks is gonna go best for the firm on a day-to-day basis, and we're going all over the map, and like we the compass is not really really well set at this point. There's a value to having people that I think that there's a real camaraderie that is built through that kind of like shared difficult early day experience at the firm. That's really impossible to replicate as you start to see success. And so I think, you can do your best. I think it's really helpful to create adversity, or whether that's by setting lofty goals, doing some sort of like firm gathering or retreat where you're trying to kind of like, almost recreate those early struggling days, because having that like startup mentality really builds bonds like nothing else. So got to put maybe some friction points, some adversity into the mix, but it's really truly hard to replicate those early days of just really scrapping for everything. So that probably has been a real part of that kind of like longevity.
Yeah, and I think that could be a struggle of even for me of bringing on the next employee and they're
Yeah.
like, well, you haven't been here, you haven't seen this happen, you haven't
Yeah.
been to this,
Yeah.
into that. It is hard to replicate, but you're right. Maybe, hey, new employee, we're all going to go out together on a
Yeah.
retreat and, start from this ground zero because you're now part of this team. I think that's a great idea. That could help avoid turnover for all of us. But I mean, it's kind of I could see that happening of, well, hey, you haven't been here as long as we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of a little bit of bullying going on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No, I think it's always interesting, like hearing the perspective of somebody that's been here, for 10 years, and somebody that's been here for, versus somebody that's been here for 10 days. And I mean, there's real insight from both team members, somebody that's like coming into this with a new set of eyes and is like, hey, you guys, I think maybe we're missing a few things here. Like I always try to like do some sort of a kind of
how'd
early
that go?
follow up of like, hey, what can we improve on? Like, what do you think that, where are you seeing like some places of disconnect in the office? And then again, on the flip side, you got people that have been here forever and they have that longer perspective of like, here's the reasons why we're doing it this way. But then also sometimes you're missing some blind spots in there. So it's really, I think, helpful to have that variety of perspectives. So
I think it's great that you could have a 10-day employee telling somebody, hey, I think we should do it this way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That takes a lot of getting out there
Yeah, no,
to say
it's
something like that.
I think it puts people a little bit off their guard in terms of like a 30-day 10 but normally it's around like 30 days, but like 30-day follow-up interview with somebody, of hey, what do you think is going right? What do you think's going well? And people are caught off guard by that a little bit, because they're not expecting to have any input into
Input.
this
Yep.
new spot, and it really gives a lot of ownership, I feel like, to new hires to basically be like, oh, if I've got a good suggestion, this is a place where it's welcome to bring that to the table. So
Yeah. I think that's what makes you a good firm owner. Is you're open to ideas and you're able to self-critique. Um, Everybody hates criticism. I hate
yeah, we
it.
do. We
Okay.
do.
the I think is when you're in the athletic thing, going back to that you have to figure out how to take constructive criticism because you're getting it every day We see it on TV. I love sports. I love ESPN, but we see people fail every freaking day. But they are our heroes.
Yeah.
They're our kids' heroes. So I think that that's great that I take that into perspective of, if these guys are, can't hit a baseball 1 out of 10 times and they're still making $3 million, I think it's okay. So it's just one of those things where we have to really self-reflect and take that criticism. And if you don't, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I 100% agree with that. Well, I really appreciate the time, James. Now, 2 days in a row, we've gotten to like throw some good ideas back and forth. It's been fun. So I appreciate very much you sharing your insights to success and the culture that you have created and the kind of longevity that you have built in your team. I think it's just incredible, and really appreciate you sharing your insights with the audience.
I appreciate you having me, Jake, and you rest up for Christmas and the New Year because I know you're going to hit the ground running in 2024.
Toe the line, baby.